When Usha Vance stepped into the crowded community center that humid Tuesday afternoon, she had no idea that a little girl's tears would soon change everything. The Second Lady of the United States moved quietly through the bustling space, her presence understated yet commanding, as children's laughter echoed off the walls and volunteers bustled about preparing for the afternoon's youth mentorship program. Comment where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you why kindness matters more than status. The Riverside Community Center had seen better days. Paint peeled from the walls in gentle curls, and the fluorescent lights flickered intermittently above worn linoleum floors. But what the building lacked in polish, it made up for in heart. Colorful artwork created by local children adorned every available surface, and handmade banners reading "Dreams have no limits and every child matters" hung proudly from the ceiling. The air buzzed with the energy of possibility, mixed with the faint scent of fresh markers and construction paper. Usha had arrived early for her scheduled visit, part of a nationwide initiative to support underprivileged youth programs. She preferred these unannounced moments before the formal proceedings began, when she could observe the authentic interactions and genuine atmosphere that made these programs special. Today, she wore a simple navy blazer and comfortable flats, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had learned long ago that connecting with children required shedding the formal trappings of her official role. As she moved through the main activity room, Usha noticed the careful segregation that often occurred naturally among children. The confident ones clustered near the art supplies, chattering excitedly about their projects. The athletic kids had claimed the basketball area, their voices carrying across the space as they debated teams and rules. And then there were the quiet ones, the observers, the children who seemed to carry invisible weights on their small shoulders. It was in the far corner, partially hidden behind a display of student essays, that Usha first heard the soft sobbing. The sound was almost lost beneath the general commotion, but her trained ear, honed by years of working with children in various capacities, caught the distinct pitch of a young person in distress. She paused, listening carefully, and heard it again. A quiet, heartbroken whimper that seemed to come from someone trying desperately not to be noticed. Following the sound, Usha discovered a small girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, sitting alone on a plastic chair that was too big for her frame. The child's shoulders shook with silent sobs, her face buried in her hands. Her dark skin gleamed with tears, and her carefully braided hair was beginning to come loose from its neat rows. She wore a bright yellow dress that should have radiated sunshine, but instead seemed to emphasize her profound sadness. Usha's heart clenched. In her years of public service and community work, she had encountered countless children facing various challenges. But there was something about this particular child's quiet despair that struck her deeply. The girl wasn't seeking attention or throwing a tantrum. She was suffering in silence, trying to make herself invisible while her world crumbled around her. Before Usha could approach, she heard footsteps behind her. A woman's voice, sharp with irritation, cut through the ambient noise of the center. "There you are, Denise Strong. I've been looking everywhere for you." Usha turned to see a tall, impeccably dressed woman striding toward the crying child. Everything about Christina Dixon screamed authority and impatience. Her blonde hair was styled in a perfect bob. Her makeup was flawless despite the afternoon heat, and her designer pantsuit looked completely out of place in the humble community center. She carried herself with the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Christina was the center's newest board member, recently appointed after making a substantial donation. She had arrived with grand plans for modernizing the facility and implementing what she called efficiency measures. Her wealth and connections had earned her respect from the center's administration, but the staff and volunteers had quickly learned to tread carefully around her volatile temperament. "Denise, what is this nonsense?" Christina's voice carried an edge of disgust as she towered over the small girl. "Stop that crying immediately. You're disrupting the entire program." The child, Denise, looked up with tear-streaked cheeks, her large brown eyes wide with fear and confusion. "I'm sorry, Miss Christina. I didn't mean to—" "Don't make excuses," Christina interrupted, her voice growing louder. Several other children nearby stopped their activities to stare. "Do you know how embarrassing this is? We have important visitors coming today, and here you are making a scene over what? Some silly childhood nonsense." Usha felt her jaw tighten as she watched the interaction unfold. The woman's tone was harsh enough to use with an adult who had committed a serious offense, let alone a distressed child. She took a step closer, positioning herself where she could intervene if necessary, but remained far enough away to observe the full scope of the situation. Denise wiped her nose with the back of her hand, trying to compose herself under Christina's withering gaze. "It's not nonsense," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The other kids said my skin is too dark. They said I look like I'm dirty and that's why nobody wants to be my friend." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Usha felt her chest tighten with a familiar pain, the echo of childhood memories she had thought long buried. She had heard those same cruel words directed at herself decades ago, had felt that same crushing rejection and confusion about something. She could never change, but Christina's response was swift and callous. She rolled her eyes dramatically and let out an exasperated sigh. "Oh, for heaven's sake, is that what this is about? Denise, you need to develop thicker skin, no pun intended. Children say mean things sometimes. That's just how the world works." "But they said I'm ugly because—" "Enough!" Christina's voice cracked like a whip, causing several nearby children to flinch. "I don't want to hear another word about this ridiculous drama. You know what your problem is, Denise. You're too sensitive. You focus on all the wrong things instead of being grateful for what you have. Do you see these other children complaining about every little comment?" She gestured broadly at the room, where most of the other children had stopped their activities entirely to watch the confrontation. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious, but all seemed to sense the tension that had suddenly filled the space. "Look, and Emily Hawkins over there," Christina continued, pointing to a pale, freckled girl near the art station. "She doesn't cry every time someone mentions her red hair. Or what about Christopher Taylor? He wears glasses and nobody sees him throwing a tantrum about it. You need to learn to accept reality, Denise. Some people are blessed with natural beauty, and others—" She paused, letting her gaze travel meaningfully over Denise's tear-stained face. "Others need to find different ways to contribute." The casual cruelty of the statement hit Usha like a physical slap. She watched as young Denise's face crumpled further, the child's spirit visibly breaking under the weight of such calculated dismissal. This wasn't discipline or tough love. This was systematic destruction of a child's self-worth by an adult who should have been protecting her. "The truth is," Christina continued, warming to her theme, "you'd be much happier if you just accepted your limitations. Focus on being helpful instead of trying to fit in where you don't belong. Maybe volunteer to help with cleanup or something useful like that. Not everyone can be the star of the show, Denise. Some people are just meant to stay in the background." Usha had heard enough. Every instinct screamed at her to intervene, but she forced herself to remain still for a moment longer, understanding that timing would be crucial. She needed to see the full extent of Christina's behavior before acting, needed to understand exactly what kind of environment this child was enduring. "I just wanted to make friends," Denise whispered, her voice breaking. "I just wanted someone to like me." Christina's laugh was sharp and ugly. "Well, maybe if you tried harder to fit in, instead of drawing attention to yourself with all this crying and drama. Honestly, Denise, your attitude is the problem here. You walk around feeling sorry for yourself instead of working on becoming someone others might actually want to be around. The woman's words were like poison, each syllable designed to cut deeper into an already wounded child's heart. Usha could see other children in the area shifting uncomfortably, some of them looking as if they wanted to speak up, but were too intimidated by Christina's authority to dare. And another thing, Christina continued, her voice taking on a lecturing tone, you need to understand that life isn't fair. Some people are born with advantages and others aren't. The sooner you accept that your particular challenges mean you'll need to work twice as hard just to be half as successful, the better off you'll be. She leaned down closer to Denise, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper that Usha could still hear clearly. Stop expecting the world to make allowances for your feelings, Denise. Nobody owes you friendship or acceptance. If you want those things, you need to earn them by being useful, not by sitting around crying about things you can't change. At that moment, something inside Usha snapped. She had spent her entire adult life advocating for children, had dedicated countless hours to programs designed to build up young people's confidence and self-worth. She had seen too many bright spirits crushed by thoughtless adults who wielded their authority like weapons against the vulnerable. But this went beyond thoughtlessness. Christina's words weren't just cruel, they were systematically designed to destroy a child's sense of self-worth based on racial characteristics she could never change. The woman was teaching Denise that her dark skin made her less valuable, less deserving of friendship and acceptance, less worthy of basic human dignity. Usha thought of her own daughters, of the conversations she and her husband had already begun, having about identity and belonging in America. She thought of all the children who had been taught to hate themselves because adults had failed them at crucial moments. She thought of the generations of damage that could be prevented if just one person stood up at the right moment. The time for observation had ended. Usha stepped forward, her movement deliberate and confident. She cleared her throat softly, and both Christina and Denise looked up in surprise. "Excuse me," Usha said, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "I couldn't help but overhear this conversation, and I think there might be a misunderstanding here." Christina straightened immediately, her demeanor shifting as she took in Usha's professional appearance and confident bearing. "Oh, hello there. I'm Christina Dixon, board member here at the center. I was just handling a small disciplinary matter, nothing to concern yourself with." "Actually," Usha replied, moving closer to where Denise sat, "I think it concerns me very much." She knelt down beside the child's chair, bringing herself to eye level with the little girl. "Hi there." "Sweetheart, I'm Usha. Can you tell me your name?" "Denise," the child whispered, still sniffling but looking surprised by the gentle attention. "That's a beautiful name, Denise. I heard you saying that some children made unkind comments about your skin color. That must have hurt your feelings." "Very much." Denise nodded, fresh tears threatening to spill over. "They said I was dirty and ugly. They said that's why nobody wants to play with me." Usha felt her heart break a little more, but she kept her voice steady and warm. "Those children said something very wrong, Denise. Your skin is absolutely beautiful. It's the same rich, gorgeous color as warm chocolate or polished wood. There's nothing dirty or ugly about you at all." Christina shifted impatiently behind them. "Look, Miss Vance," Usha replied without turning around, keeping her focus on Denise. Mrs. Vance, I appreciate your concern, but I've been working with these children for months now. I understand their needs and their particular challenges. Sometimes a firm hand is necessary to help them develop realistic expectations about their place in the world." Now Usha did turn, rising slowly to face Christina directly. Her expression remained calm, but there was steel in her dark eyes. "Their place in the world. And what exactly do you believe Denise's place should be?" Christina waved dismissively. "Look, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm being practical. Some children are naturally more appealing than others. It's better for everyone if we help them understand their strengths instead of encouraging unrealistic social expectations. I see. Usha's voice was dangerously quiet. And you've determined that Denise's strength lies in, what did you say? Clean-up work? Staying in the background? Well, yes, she's a perfectly fine child for certain types of activities, but she needs to understand that not everyone can be popular or widely accepted. It's just reality. The casual racism embedded in Christina's words was breathtaking in its scope. She had essentially written off a 7-year-old child's social potential based entirely on the color of her skin, then dressed it up as practical advice. Usha had encountered this type of thinking before, but rarely delivered with such confident cruelty to a child's face. Reality, Usha repeated slowly. And whose reality are we talking about exactly? Christina's confidence faltered slightly. There was something in Usha's tone that suggested she was walking into dangerous territory, but her arrogance prevented her from recognizing the warning signs. The reality of how the world works, Christina said, doubling down. Look, I'm sure, in some communities, Denise would fit right in, but here, in this environment, she needs to learn to adapt. I'm actually trying to help her by setting appropriate expectations. Appropriate expectations. Usha's voice carried a note that made several nearby adults turn to look. Based on the color of her skin, based on social dynamics and practical considerations, Christina corrected, but her voice carried less certainty now. I have extensive experience in child development and social programming. I know what works and what doesn't. Usha glanced down at Denise, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes, clearly sensing the tension, but not fully understanding its source. Then she looked back at Christina, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. Ms. Dixon, I think you and I need to have a very serious conversation about your approach to child welfare and your understanding of appropriate adult behavior in an educational setting. Something in Usha's tone finally penetrated Christina's arrogance. For the first time, she seemed to really look at the woman standing before her, the confident posture, the quality of her clothing, the unmistakable air of authority that comes from holding real power rather than simply demanding it. I'm sorry, but who exactly are you? Christina asked, her voice carrying the first hint of uncertainty. Usha smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm someone who believes that every child deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance. I'm someone who understands that adults have a responsibility to build children up, not tear them down. And I'm someone who's about to make sure that Denise knows exactly how beautiful and valuable she really is. The confrontation was far from over, but battle lines had been drawn. In the corner of a humble community center, two very different philosophies about childhood, race, and human worth were about to collide. And young Denise Strong was about to discover that sometimes, when the world seems darkest, unexpected angels appear to remind us of our true value. The tension in the room continued to build as other staff members began to notice the confrontation, and somewhere in the background, a phone began to ring with what would soon prove to be a very important call about exactly who Usha Vance really was. The phone's insistent ringing cut through the tension like a blade, but neither woman moved to answer it. Christina's eyes had narrowed as she studied Usha more carefully, taking in details she had initially missed. The quiet confidence, the way other adults in the room had begun to gravitate toward their conversation. The unmistakable bearing of someone accustomed to command. You still haven't answered my question, Christina said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. Who are you, exactly? Because last I checked, I don't answer to random visitors about how I choose to discipline the children under my supervision. Usha's expression remained serene, but those watching closely could see the steel beneath her calm exterior. The children under your supervision, she repeated quietly. Is that how you see Denise? as someone under your control rather than under your care. Don't twist my words, Christina snapped, her composure beginning to crack. I've donated more money to this center than anyone else on the board. I've invested my time and resources into making this place better, and I won't be lectured by some bleeding heart do-gooder who wanders in off the street. The conversation had begun to draw a crowd. Jennifer Kelly, the center's program coordinator, had approached from across the room, her face creased with concern. Behind her, several volunteers had paused in their activities, sensing the escalating conflict. Most significantly, Daniel Lopez, the center's director, had emerged from his office, still holding the phone that had been ringing moments before. "Mrs. Dixon," Jennifer said carefully, "perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private. The children are starting to notice." Indeed, young faces throughout the room had turned toward the confrontation. Some children looked frightened by the raised voices, while others seemed fascinated by the adult drama unfolding before them. Denise remained in her chair, tears still streaming down her face. But now she watched Usha with something approaching hope. "There's nothing private about child welfare," Usha said firmly. "When adults abuse their authority to harm children, it becomes everyone's business." Christina's face flushed red. "Abuse? How dare you? I've done nothing but try to help these children develop realistic expectations about their futures. If you think protecting them from disappointment is abuse, then you clearly don't understand the real world." "The real world," Usha repeated, her voice gaining strength. "Let me tell you about the real world, Ms. Dixon. In the real world, children like Denise grow up to become doctors, lawyers, teachers, and leaders. In the real world, the color of someone's skin has nothing to do with their worth or their potential. In the real world, adults who tell children they're inherently less valuable because of their race aren't helping them. They're perpetuating systems of oppression that have damaged generations." The room had grown quieter as Usha spoke, her words carrying the weight of lived experience and hard-won wisdom. Daniel Lopez had finished his phone call and was moving closer, his expression troubled as he took in the scene. Christina laughed, but the sound was ugly and defensive. "Oh, please, spare me the social justice lecture. I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about reality. Some children are naturally more charismatic, more attractive, more socially successful than others. It has nothing to do with skin color, and everything to do with natural gifts and social skills." "Really?" Usha's voice was dangerously quiet. "Then explain to me why you specifically pointed out Denise's dark skin as something she needs to accept about herself. Explain why you told her that her particular challenges would require her to work twice as hard. What challenges were you referring to exactly?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Christina opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, clearly realizing that any answer would only dig her deeper into the hole she had created. That's not what I meant," she stammered. "You're taking my words out of context." "Am I?" Usha knelt down beside Denise again, her voice gentling as she addressed the child. "Denise, sweetie, when Ms. Dixon talked about your challenges and your limitations, what did you think she meant?" Denise looked up with those large, trusting eyes. "She meant because I'm black," she said simply. "She said, the other kids don't like me because my skin is dark, and I should just accept it and try to be useful instead." The child's matter-of-fact repetition of Christina's poison hit the room like a physical blow. Several adults audibly gasped, and Jennifer Kelly's hand flew to cover her mouth. Even some of the children who had been listening looked shocked by the casual cruelty of the statement. Christina's face had gone pale. "That's not... I never said you're putting words in my mouth." "Those are her words, Ms. Dixon," Usha said, rising to face Christina directly. "Those are the words of a 7-year-old child who just learned from a trusted adult that her skin color makes her less worthy of friendship and acceptance." Those are the words that will echo in her mind every time she looks in a mirror or tries to make a new friend. Daniel Lopez had finally reached them, and his face was grave. "Mrs. Dixon, Mrs. Vance, I think we need to discuss this in my office immediately." "Mrs. Vance?" Christina's voice cracked slightly. "Did you say Mrs. Vance?" Something in Daniel's expression made Christina's blood run cold. The way he had said the name, the deference in his tone, the sudden tension in the room, it all pointed to something she was only beginning to understand. "Daniel," Christina said carefully, "who exactly is Mrs. Vance?" Before Daniel could answer, his assistant, Amy Guerra, appeared at his elbow, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Lopez, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just got off the phone with the mayor's office. They wanted to confirm the arrival time for the second lady's visit this afternoon. Apparently, there was some confusion about the schedule." The words fell into the silence like stones into still water, creating ripples of understanding that spread throughout the room. Christina's face went through a spectrum of colors, from pale to red to an ashen gray, as the full implications hit. "Oh, the second lady," she whispered. "Mrs. Usha Vance," Daniel confirmed, his voice tight with barely controlled anger as he looked at Christina. "Wife of the Vice President of the United States. And apparently, she's been here for the past 20 minutes, witnessing your interaction with young Denise." The transformation in Christina was immediate and dramatic. Her entire demeanor shifted, from defensive aggression to desperate damage control. She turned to Usha with wide, panicked eyes. "Mrs. Vance, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I would never... I didn't realize. If I had known who you were, if you had known who I was?" Usha's voice carried a note of dangerous calm. "Ms. Dixon, do you think my identity changes anything about what you said to this child? Do you think being the second lady makes Denise's tears more important than they were 5 minutes ago?" Christina's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Around them, the full weight of her position was beginning to dawn on the other adults in the room. Whispered conversations broke out as staff members and volunteers tried to process what they had just witnessed. "No, of course not," Christina stammered. "But I want you to understand I would never intentionally hurt a child. I was just trying to help her develop realistic expectations." "Realistic expectations," Usha repeated, her voice growing stronger. "Let me share some realistic expectations with you, Ms. Dixon. Realistically, every child in this room deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Realistically, adults in positions of authority have a responsibility to build children up, not tear them down. And realistically, what I witnessed here today was nothing short of psychological abuse directed at a vulnerable child." The word abuse hit the room like a thunderclap. Jennifer Kelly stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "Mrs. Vance is right," she said, her voice shaking slightly but growing stronger with each word. "I've been watching Ms. Dixon's interactions with the children for weeks now, and this isn't the first time she's made inappropriate comments. I should have spoken up sooner." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, though his expression suggested he suspected what was coming. Jennifer glanced nervously at Christina, then seemed to draw strength from Usha's presence. "Last week, she told Marcus Smith that he would never amount to anything because he comes from a broken home. 2 weeks ago, she suggested that Maria Lopez, your niece Daniel, should focus on traditional women's roles instead of her interest in science because some people aren't cut out for academic careers." More voices joined the chorus. Amy Guerra spoke up. She told Kevin West that his stutter meant he should avoid leadership activities. She said it would save everyone the embarrassment. Another volunteer, Holly Humphrey, raised her hand tentatively. She suggested that we separate the children into different activity groups based on what she called their natural social hierarchies. When I asked what that meant, she said some children were natural leaders and others were natural followers, and we shouldn't try to fight against nature. With each revelation, Christina seemed to shrink smaller. The pattern was unmistakable, a systematic campaign to limit children's aspirations based on race, economic background, gender, and perceived disabilities. What had seemed like isolated incidents were revealed as part of a broader philosophy that was antithetical to everything the community center represented. Usha listened to each account with growing fury, but her voice remained controlled. Ms. Dixon, do you understand what you've been doing? You've been systematically crushing these children's dreams and aspirations. You've been teaching them that they're less valuable, less capable, less worthy of success based on characteristics they cannot control. That's not... I never intended... Christina's voice was barely a whisper now. Intention doesn't matter when the impact is this devastating, Usha replied firmly. These children look up to adults for guidance and support. When you tell them they're limited by their race, their family situation, their physical differences, or their gender, you're not just expressing an opinion, you're shaping their entire understanding of their place in the world. Daniel Lopez had heard enough. His face was grim as he addressed Christina directly. Ms. Dixon, I think it's clear that your approach to child development is fundamentally incompatible with our mission here at the center. We're going to need to discuss your continued involvement with the board. Christina's panic reached a fever pitch. Daniel, please, you can't seriously be considering removing me from the board over a misunderstanding? Think about the financial implications, my donations, my connections in the community. This place needs people like me. People like you. Usha's voice cut through Christina's desperate plea. What exactly do you mean by that? Christina realized. Her mistake immediately, but it was too late. I mean, people with resources. People who understand how to manage these situations effectively. These situations, Usha repeated. You mean situations involving children who don't look like you? Children whose families don't have the same advantages you've had? The racism that had been lurking beneath Christina's words throughout the confrontation was now fully exposed. Her attempts to dress up her prejudice as practical guidance had crumbled under scrutiny, revealing the ugly truth beneath. Usha turned away from Christina and knelt beside Denise once more. The little girl had been watching the entire exchange with wide eyes, clearly understanding that something important was happening, but not grasping all the implications. Denise, sweetheart, Usha said gently, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Everything Ms. Dixon said to you was wrong. Your skin is beautiful. You are beautiful. You are smart and valuable and deserving of friendship and success, just like any other child in this room. Denise's tears had stopped, replaced by something like wonder. Really, Usha confirmed. Do you know what I see when I look at you? I see a little girl with kind eyes and a gentle heart. I see someone who cares deeply about others. That's why those mean comments hurt you so much, because you have empathy. I see someone with incredible potential who deserves every opportunity to shine. But the other kids said, the other kids were wrong too, Usha said firmly. Sometimes people say hurtful things because they don't understand how beautiful differences can be. Your dark skin isn't something to hide or be ashamed of. It's something to celebrate. It connects you to a rich heritage of strong, brilliant, accomplished people who have changed the world. Around them, other children had gathered closer, drawn by the warmth in Usha's voice and the obvious care she was showing Denise. Some of them looked ashamed, perhaps recognizing themselves as the ones who had made the cruel comments that started this entire situation. Usha noticed their presence and made a decision that would resonate far beyond this single afternoon. She stood and addressed the entire group, her voice carrying clearly across the room. Children, I want all of you to listen to something very important. Every single person in this room is valuable and special, no matter what they look like, where they come from, or what challenges they face. The differences between us, our different skin colors, our different families, our different abilities, these aren't things that make us better or worse than each other. They're things that make us unique and interesting. She gestured to the diverse group of children surrounding her. Emily Hawkins, your red hair isn't something to be teased about. It's beautiful and distinctive. Christopher Taylor, your glasses help you see the world clearly, and that's wonderful. All of you have something special to offer and none of you should ever let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. The children were hanging on her every word, and Usha could see understanding dawning in their young faces. This was education at its most powerful level, not just information, but transformation. But Mrs. Vance, one of the children called out, what if people keep saying mean things? Usha smiled, recognizing the question as an opportunity to teach a crucial life lesson. That's a very good question. Unfortunately, some people will say mean things sometimes. But you know what? That says more about them than it does about you. When someone tries to make you feel bad about who you are, it usually means they're feeling bad about themselves. She looked directly at Christina as she continued. People who are truly confident and happy don't need to put others down. They lift others up instead. And when you encounter someone who tries to make you feel small, you can choose to remember all the people who see your worth and value your presence in this world. The lesson was clearly directed as much at the adults in the room as at the children. Christina stood frozen, her earlier arrogance completely deflated as she was forced to confront the ugliness of her own behavior reflected in the clarity of a child's understanding. Daniel Lopez stepped forward, his decision made. Ms. Dixon, I think it would be best if you left the premises now. We'll be scheduling a board meeting to discuss your continued involvement with the center. Christina looked around the room desperately, seeking some ally or escape route, but found none. The staff members who had once deferred to her wealth and connections now looked at her with expressions ranging from disappointment to disgust. The children she had tried to diminish were standing taller, their confidence visibly growing under Usha's affirming words. This isn't over, Christina said quietly, but her words lacked conviction. I'll speak with the other board members. They'll understand that I was only trying to help. I hope they will understand, Usha replied calmly. I hope they'll understand exactly what kind of help you were offering to vulnerable children, and I hope they'll make the right decision about whether that's the kind of help this community needs. As Christina gathered her purse and prepared to leave, Usha turned back to Denise. The transformation in the little girl was already remarkable. Her tears had dried, her shoulders were straighter, and there was a spark in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Denise, Usha said, would you like to help me with something very special this afternoon? The child nodded eagerly, and Usha smiled. I'm going to be talking to all the children and families here about dreams and goals and possibilities. Would you like to be my special assistant? You could help me meet everyone and make sure nobody feels left out. It was a master stroke of psychology. By giving Denise a position of responsibility and inclusion, Usha was directly countering every message Christina had tried to plant in the child's mind. Instead of being told to stay in the background, Denise was being invited to the center of attention. Instead of being told she wasn't friendship material, she was being trusted with the important job of helping others feel welcome. Really? Denise's face lit up with a joy that made several adults in the room tear up. Really? Usha confirmed. I think you have exactly the kind of caring heart that would make you perfect for the job. As Christina Dixon finally left the building, her footsteps echoing hollowly in the corridor, the atmosphere in the main room began to shift. The tension and ugliness she had brought were dissipating, replaced by something warmer and more hopeful. But Usha knew the real work was just beginning. Christina's departure was only the first step in healing the damage that had been done, not just to Denise, but to all the children who had witnessed or experienced similar treatment. The seeds of self-doubt and internalized prejudice that had been planted would need careful, patient nurturing to overcome. As she watched Denise begin to interact more confidently with the other children, Usha felt the familiar fire of purpose burning in her chest. This was why she had chosen to use her platform for advocacy. This was why she had committed to visiting programs like this one, even when her schedule was packed with official duties. Every child deserved what Denise was experiencing right now, the moment of recognition that they mattered, that they were valuable, that their dreams were worth pursuing. And if it took the full weight of her office to ensure that children like Denise received that message, then she was more than willing to use every tool at her disposal. The afternoon was far from over, and there was still much work to be done. The silence that followed Christina's departure felt like a held breath, slowly being released. Children who had been frozen in fascination began to move again, their voices returning in tentative whispers that gradually grew into normal conversation. But the energy in the room had fundamentally shifted. Where there had been tension and fear, there was now something approaching wonder. Usha remained kneeling beside Denise, giving the child time to process everything that had just happened. She could see the wheels turning in the little girl's mind, trying to reconcile the cruel words she had heard with the affirmation she was now receiving. This transition period was crucial. It would determine whether Denise truly absorbed the positive messages or simply dismissed them as temporary kindness from a stranger. Mrs. Vance, Daniel Lopez approached carefully, his voice filled with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "I cannot begin to apologize for what you witnessed here today. Ms. Dixon's behavior was completely unacceptable, and I take full responsibility for not addressing it sooner." Usha stood, keeping one gentle hand on Denise's shoulder. "Mr. Lopez, what matters now isn't what happened before, but what happens next. How do we ensure that children like Denise never have to endure that kind of treatment again?" The question sparked immediate conversation among the staff members who had gathered around. Jennifer Kelly stepped forward first, her earlier nervousness replaced by determined resolve. "We need better training," she said firmly, "not just for board members, but for all volunteers and staff. We need clear guidelines about appropriate interaction with children, and we need consequences for people who violate those standards." Amy Guerra nodded enthusiastically. "And we need to create an environment where staff feel safe speaking up when they see problems." I knew Ms. Dixon's comments were inappropriate, but she was a major donor and board member. I was afraid my concerns wouldn't be taken seriously. Holly Humphrey raised her hand tentatively. "What about the children? Some of them have been hearing these messages for weeks. How do we help them unlearn the harmful things they've been told?" It was exactly the right question, and Usha felt a surge of respect for these dedicated individuals who were thinking beyond the immediate crisis to the deeper healing that would be required. "That's going to take time and consistency," Usha replied. Thoughtfully, children who have been told they're limited or less valuable need repeated experiences that contradict those messages. They need to see themselves succeed, to be celebrated for their unique qualities, and to witness other adults consistently treating them with respect and high expectations. She looked around at the diverse group of children still lingering nearby, many of whom were clearly listening to the adult conversation with keen interest. But it starts with moments like this one, when children see adults standing up for what's right, when they hear clear messages about their worth and potential. Those experiences become anchors they can hold on to when the world tries to tell them otherwise. As if summoned by her words, several children began to approach. First came Emily Hawkins, the red-haired girl Christina had mentioned earlier. Her freckled face was earnest as she looked up at Usha. "Mrs. Vance, is it really okay?" To be different. I mean, kids do tease me about my hair sometimes, and Miss Dixon said I should just ignore it, but it still hurts. Usha's heart went out to the child. Here was another young person who had been receiving subtle messages about managing rather than celebrating her distinctiveness. Emily, your red hair is absolutely beautiful. It's rare and special, just like you are. When people tease you about it, they're usually jealous because they wish they had something as unique and lovely. She knelt down to Emily's level, bringing herself into the circle of children who were gathering around. But more importantly, Emily, being different isn't just okay. It's wonderful. The things that make you unique are often the things that will make you extraordinary as you grow up. Artists and scientists and leaders throughout history have often been people who were considered different when they were young. Christopher Taylor, the boy with glasses that Christina had also mentioned, stepped forward shyly. My mum says, my glasses make me look smart, but some kids call me Four Eyes and say I'm a nerd. Christopher, Usha said warmly, do you know what I see when I look at your glasses? I see someone who takes learning seriously. I see someone who wants to see the world clearly and understand how things work. Do you know how many successful people wear glasses? Scientists, doctors, teachers, business leaders. Glasses are a sign that you care about knowledge and understanding. She gestured to the small group that had formed around her. All of you have qualities that make you special and valuable. Denise has a kind heart and empathy for others. Emily has beautiful, distinctive features that make her memorable. Christopher has curiosity and intelligence. These aren't things to hide or apologize for. These are gifts to be proud of. Marcus Smith, a boy of about 8 with a serious expression, had been listening intently from the edge of the group. Finally, he worked up the courage to speak. Mrs. Vance, Miss Dixon said I won't amount to anything because my dad doesn't live with us. She said kids from broken homes don't usually succeed. Is that true? The question hit Usha like a physical blow. The calculated cruelty of telling a child that his family situation predetermined his failure was breathtaking in its scope. She could see the doubt and fear in Marcus's eyes, the way he was bracing himself for confirmation of his worst fears. Marcus, she said, her voice filled with gentle firmness, that is absolutely, completely untrue. Your family situation does not determine your worth or your potential for success. Some of the most accomplished, successful, and wonderful people in the world grew up in single-parent homes or faced family challenges. She paused, considering how much personal information to share, then decided the moment called for complete honesty. Do you know that my husband, the Vice President of the United States, grew up in a family that faced many difficulties? His parents struggled with problems that sometimes made life very hard, but he didn't let those challenges limit his dreams or his achievements. The children's eyes widened. The idea that someone as important as the Vice President had faced childhood difficulties was clearly revolutionary to them, but more importantly, Usha continued, your mother is raising you by herself because she loves you and believes in you. That takes incredible strength and courage. You're not from a broken home, Marcus. You're from a home where love is so strong that your mother is willing to do the work of 2 parents to give you the best life possible. Marcus's serious expression began to soften, and Usha could see hope beginning to replace the doubt in his eyes. Around them, other children nodded in recognition. Many of them came from non-traditional family situations and had clearly internalized similar messages about their supposed limitations. Maria, Lopez, Daniel's niece, had been standing quietly at the back of the group. She was perhaps 10 years old, with dark hair pulled back in neat braids and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything. Finally, she stepped forward. Mrs. Vance, Ms. Dixon said I should focus on traditional women's roles instead of Science because some people aren't cut out for academic careers. But I love science. I want to be a doctor or maybe a researcher. Am I wrong to want that? The question revealed the insidious nature of Christina's poison. She hadn't just attacked children's self-esteem, she had systematically tried to limit their aspirations based on gender, race, and socioeconomic status. The damage could have lasted a lifetime if left unchallenged. "Maria," Usha said, her voice ringing with conviction, "you are absolutely not wrong to want that. Science needs brilliant young women like you. Medicine needs compassionate, intelligent doctors like you could become. Research needs curious, dedicated minds like yours." She looked around at all the children, ensuring her words reached everyone. There is no such thing as traditional roles that should limit your dreams. There are only the dreams you're passionate about and willing to work toward. Throughout history, the people who have made the biggest differences in the world have been those who refused to accept limitations that others tried to place on them. Jennifer Kelly had been listening to this impromptu counseling session with growing amazement. She stepped forward, pulling out her phone. "Mrs. Vance, would it be appropriate for me to document some of this conversation? I think the parents and families need to hear these messages too. Many of them have been receiving similar discouraging feedback from Ms. Dixon during family conferences." Usha considered the request carefully. Her presence here was supposed to be part of an official visit, but this had become something much more personal and immediate. The healing that was happening in this moment needed to extend beyond these children to their families and the broader community. "I think that's an excellent idea," she agreed. "But let's make sure we're creating something that will continue to help long after I leave today." She turned back to the children, her mind already forming a plan. "How would all of you feel about helping me create a special video message? We could record ourselves talking about dreams and goals and the importance of believing in yourself. Then any time someone tries to tell you that you're not good enough or that your dreams are too big, you can watch it and remember what we talked about today." The children's enthusiasm was immediate and infectious. Hands shot up around the circle as they volunteered ideas and suggestions. Denise, who had been quiet for much of the discussion, suddenly found her voice. "Could we talk about how being different is good and how mean words from other people don't define who we are?" "That's perfect, Denise," Usha replied, her heart swelling with pride at the child's insight. "What else should we include?" Emily raised her hand. "We should tell other kids that their families are perfect just the way they are, even if they don't look like families on TV." Christopher adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. "And that being smart or curious isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be proud of." Maria's contribution was delivered with quiet intensity. "We should say that girls can be anything they want to be. Scientists, doctors, engineers, anything, and that no one has the right to tell us our dreams are too big." As the children continued to brainstorm, Usha noticed that other young people from around the center were beginning to join the group. Word was spreading that something special was happening, and kids who had been engaged in other activities were abandoning their projects to be part of this conversation. Among the newcomers was a boy who looked to be about 12, with the kind of serious expression that suggested he had heard adult conversations he shouldn't have had to hear. He introduced himself as Tyler Donaldson and listened intently as the other children shared their ideas. Finally, he raised his hand tentatively. "Mrs. Vance, what if the adults in your life are the ones saying you can't succeed? Like, what if it's not just random mean kids, but the grown-ups who are supposed to help you?" The question revealed a level of insight that was both impressive and heartbreaking. This child had clearly experienced exactly what Denise had gone through, adults using their authority to limit rather than encourage his potential. "Tyler, that's one of the hardest situations a young person can face," Usha replied honestly. When the adults around you don't believe in your potential, it can feel like the whole world is against you. But here's what I want you to remember. Their limitations are not your limitations. Their lack of vision doesn't diminish your possibilities. She paused, considering how to frame this complex truth in terms the children could understand and hold onto. Sometimes adults say discouraging things because they're afraid of disappointment, afraid of change, afraid of possibilities they never had themselves. But your dreams don't have to be limited by their fears. So what do we do when that happens? Tyler pressed. You find other voices, Usha replied firmly. You look for teachers, mentors, family members, community leaders, anyone who sees your potential and encourages your growth. You collect those positive voices and hold them close, so when the negative ones get loud, you have something stronger to listen to. She gestured around the room, where staff members and volunteers were listening with visible emotion. And you, remember that for every adult who tries to limit you, there are others who want to see you soar. Mr. Lopez, Ms. Kelly, Ms. Guerra, Ms. Humphrey, all of these people chose to work with young people because they believe in your potential. They're here because they want to help you succeed. Daniel Lopez stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. Mrs. Vance is absolutely right. Every single one of you has unlimited potential, and it's our job to help you discover and develop. What happened with Ms. Dixon will never happen again, not on my watch. The commitment in his voice seemed to resonate with the children, and Usha could see some of the tension they had been carrying begin to release. This was what healing looked like, not just the removal of harmful influences, but the reinforcement of positive ones. Amy Guerra raised her hand like one of the children. Mrs. Vance, could we make this video project something ongoing? Like, could the kids create a whole series of messages about different topics, handling bullying, believing in your dreams, celebrating differences? That's a brilliant idea, Usha replied enthusiastically. You could create your own library of positive messages made by kids for kids, and you could share them with other community centers and schools so your voices could help children everywhere. The energy in the room was now electric with possibility. What had begun as a crisis response was transforming into something much larger, a sustained effort to counteract the kinds of harmful messages that children received from various sources. Holly. Humphrey stepped forward with a notebook, already taking notes. We could develop this into a comprehensive program. Media literacy to help kids recognize and respond to negative messages, leadership training to help them become advocates for other children, creative expression workshops where they can explore their interests and talents. And we could invite successful adults from the community to come share their stories, Jennifer added. People who faced challenges as children but went on to achieve their dreams. Show the kids real examples of what's possible. Usha watched. The staff members brainstorm with the same enthusiasm as the children, and she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was how real change happened. Not through grand gestures or policy pronouncements, but through committed individuals choosing to create nurturing environments where young people could flourish. Denise tugged gently on Usha's jacket. Mrs. Vance, will you come back to see our videos when we make them? The question was simple, but it carried enormous weight. This child, who had been told just an hour ago that she should accept her limitations and stay in the background, was now asking one of the most powerful women in the country to return and witness her growth. Denise, Usha said, kneeling down, to look the child in the eyes. I would be honored to come back and see your videos. And I want you to promise me something. Promise me that you'll remember how special and valuable you are, even when I'm not here to remind you. I promise, Denise said solemnly. And Mrs. Vance, thank you for helping me remember that I matter. The simple words, delivered with such genuine gratitude, brought tears to the eyes of every adult in the room. In that moment, The transformation was complete, not just for Denise, but for everyone who had witnessed it. They had all been reminded of why they had chosen to work with children, why advocacy mattered, and why standing up for what was right could change lives in ways both immediate and lasting. But even as the afternoon's crisis resolved into hope and possibility, Usha knew that the real test would come in the weeks and months ahead. Building children's confidence and resilience was not a one-day project. It required sustained effort, consistent messaging, and ongoing vigilance against the forces that would seek to diminish their potential. The work was just beginning, but the foundation had been laid, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. Chapter 4, 3 months later, the Riverside Community Center had transformed into something entirely different from the institution Usha had first encountered. The same peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights remained. The center's budget hadn't magically increased overnight, but the atmosphere thrummed with an energy that money couldn't buy. Children's laughter echoed through halls where confidence had replaced confusion, and the walls now displayed not just artwork, but proclamations of dreams and aspirations written in bold, colorful letters. Usha returned on a crisp October afternoon, as she had promised Denise she would. But this wasn't the quiet, unannounced visit of her first encounter. This time, she came as an honored guest to witness the culmination of everything that had grown from that difficult day in July. The main activity room had been transformed into a makeshift theater, with rows of folding chairs facing a small stage area where a projection screen displayed the center's new motto, "Every dream matters, every voice counts, every child shines." Parents, community members, and local officials filled the seats, all gathered to witness the premiere of the video series that had grown far beyond anyone's initial imagination. As Usha entered the room, she was struck immediately by the confidence radiating from the children who rushed to greet her. Denise was among the first to reach her, but this was not the same broken child who had been crying alone in a corner months before. This Denise stood tall, her shoulders squared with pride, wearing a bright purple dress that seemed to reflect the joy in her eyes. Her hair was styled in elaborate braids, decorated with colorful beads, and she carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who had discovered her own worth. "Mrs. Vance, you came back!" Denise's smile was radiant as she threw her arms around Usha in an enthusiastic hug. "Wait until you see what we've created. It's even better than we imagined." Behind Denise came the familiar faces Usha remembered from that transformative afternoon. Emily Hawkins bounded forward, her red hair now worn long and loose, no longer hidden under a hat as it had been during Usha's first visit. Christopher Taylor had traded his old glasses for a stylish new pair that seemed to amplify rather than diminish his confident demeanor. Maria Lopez carried a tablet displaying what appeared to be a complex scientific diagram, her eyes bright with the kind of intellectual curiosity that no adult should ever try to suppress. "Mrs. Vance," Marcus Smith approached with a serious but proud expression, "I need to show you something really important. My mom came to the premiere today and she brought someone special, my dad. They're back together now, but even when they weren't, I learned that it didn't define my future. I'm still going to be successful, no matter what my family looks like." The transformation in these children was remarkable, but Usha could see it extended far beyond individual confidence boosts. They had become a community, supporting and lifting each other in ways that spoke to fundamental changes in the center's culture. Tyler Donaldson, the 12-year-old who had asked the penetrating question about adults who discouraged dreams, now wore a badge that read Youth Advocate. He approached Usha with the bearing of someone who had found his calling. "Mrs. Vance, we've documented everything," he said seriously. "Not just the videos, but the whole process of healing and growth. We want other kids who are facing what we face to know that change is possible. We've created a toolkit for community centers and schools to help them recognize and respond to harmful adult behavior toward children. The sophistication of his language and thinking demonstrated how empowering children to analyze their experiences had accelerated their intellectual and emotional development. This wasn't just healing, it was transformation into young leaders and advocates. Daniel Lopez appeared at Usha's side, his face glowing with pride and gratitude. "Mrs. Vance, I can't begin to express what your intervention has meant for our community, but perhaps it's better if you see for yourself." He gestured toward the projection screen, where the first video was beginning to play. The title card read, "Denise's Story, From Tears to Triumph." The video opened with Denise speaking directly to the camera, her voice clear and strong. "My name is Denise Strong, and I want to tell you about the day someone tried to make me believe I wasn't good enough because of the color of my skin." Usha felt her breath catch as she watched the child she had comforted transform into a powerful young speaker. Denise's narrative was sophisticated and compelling, weaving together the pain of that July afternoon with the lessons learned and growth achieved in the months since. "A woman told me I should accept limitations because I was black," Denise continued on screen. "She said I should stay in the background and just try to be useful. But then someone showed me that those words weren't true, that they said more about her than they said about me." The video cut to scenes of Denise engaged in various activities at the center, leading a reading group for younger children, presenting a science project, laughing with friends of all different backgrounds. The visual evidence of her flourishing contradicted every limiting message she had initially received. "Now I know that my skin is beautiful," Denise declared with conviction. "I know that I can be anything I want to be. And I know that when adults try to make children feel small, it's usually because they feel small themselves, but their feelings don't have to become our reality." The video concluded with Denise looking directly into the camera. "If someone has told you that you're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough, they were wrong. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, and your dreams are exactly as big as they should be. Don't let anyone make you smaller than you are." As the first video ended, applause filled the room, but Usha noticed that many of the adults were wiping away tears. The power of Denise's transformation, delivered in her own words and authentic voice, was profoundly moving. Jennifer Kelly stepped forward to introduce the next video. Our second film features Emily Hawkins discussing the beauty of being different and how the things that make us unique should be celebrated, not hidden. Emily's video opened with her standing in an art studio, surrounded by paintings that incorporated her distinctive red hair as a central theme. "For a long time, I tried to hide what made me different," she began. "I wore hats and tried to blend in because kids teased me about my hair. But now I understand that different doesn't mean wrong. It means special." The video showed Emily's artwork, which had evolved to celebrate not just her own uniqueness, but the distinctive qualities of all the children at the center. Her paintings featured children of various races, abilities, and family situations, all depicted with dignity and beauty. "Being different gave me perspective," Emily continued. "It taught me to notice when other people were being excluded or made to feel less than. Now I use my art to show how beautiful all kinds of differences can be." The third video featured Christopher Taylor in what appeared to be a makeshift laboratory, discussing how intellectual curiosity should be nurtured rather than mocked. His transformation from a shy, apologetic child to a confident young scientist was evident in every gesture and word. "Smart isn't an insult," Christopher declared, adjusting his glasses with pride. "Curiosity isn't something to be embarrassed about. When kids called me a nerd, they thought they were putting me down. But now I know they were actually describing someone who loves learning. And that's something to be proud of." His video included Footage of him leading science demonstrations for younger children, his enthusiasm infectious as he guided them through simple experiments. The sight of this formerly timid child confidently teaching others demonstrated the profound impact of having his intelligence valued rather than dismissed. Maria Lopez's contribution focused on gender stereotypes and the importance of encouraging girls in STEM fields. Her video was particularly powerful because she spoke with the authority of someone who had already begun achieving her dreams. Someone told me I should focus on traditional women's roles instead of science, Maria began, standing in front of a display showing her acceptance into a prestigious summer research program for middle school students. They said some people just aren't cut out for academic careers, but science doesn't care about gender. It cares about curiosity, dedication, and the willingness to ask questions. Her video included interviews with local female scientists and doctors who had volunteered to mentor the center's children. These successful women shared their own stories of overcoming discouragement and stereotypes, providing real-world examples of what was possible. Marcus Smith's video addressed family diversity and the strength that comes from overcoming challenges. His message was particularly poignant because of his personal growth over the past months. Someone tried to tell me that my family situation meant I couldn't succeed, Marcus began, standing beside both his parents. They called my home broken, but families come in all different shapes, and love comes in all different forms. What matters isn't the structure of your family. It's the support and encouragement you receive. His video featured interviews with successful adults from various family backgrounds: single parents, divorced families, blended families, families headed by grandparents. The message was clear: family circumstances don't determine destiny. Tyler Donaldson's contribution was perhaps the most sophisticated, addressing the systemic nature of how adults sometimes discourage children and offering strategies for young people to advocate for themselves and others. When adults in positions of authority try to limit your dreams, it's not just about you, Tyler explained with remarkable maturity. It's about systems and assumptions that have been around for a long time. But every time we refuse to accept those limitations, every time we support each other in pursuing our goals, we're changing those systems. His video included practical advice for children facing discouragement, resources for reporting inappropriate adult behavior, and strategies for building supportive peer networks. It was advocacy work of the highest caliber, produced by someone who had learned to transform his own painful experiences into tools for helping others. As the final video concluded, Usha realized that what she was witnessing went far beyond the healing of individual children. This was community transformation at its most fundamental level. The children had not simply recovered from harmful treatment, they had become leaders, advocates, and educators themselves. Amy Guerra stepped forward to address the audience. These videos have already been viewed over 50,000 times since we began sharing them online. We've received messages from children, parents, and educators around the country who have been inspired by our young people's stories. But more importantly, we've received reports of other communities using these resources to address similar problems in their own programs. Daniel Lopez joined her at the front of the room. In the months since Mrs. Vance's visit, we've implemented comprehensive training for all staff and volunteers. We've established clear protocols for addressing inappropriate behavior toward children. We've created ongoing programming focused on building confidence and celebrating diversity, and we've seen remarkable changes in our children's academic performance, social engagement, and overall well-being. He paused, his voice carrying deep emotion. But perhaps most importantly, we've learned that when we truly believe in children's potential and create environments where they can flourish, they don't just meet our expectations. They exceed them in ways we never imagined possible. Holly. Humphrey raised her hand to speak. Mrs. Vance, the children wanted me to share some statistics with you. Since July, standardized test scores at our center have improved by an average of 30%. College aspirations among our middle school participants have increased by 60%, and reports of bullying or discriminatory behavior have decreased by over 80%. But the numbers don't tell the whole story, Jennifer Kelly added. What we've really created here is a culture where every child knows they matter, where differences are celebrated rather than criticized, and where adults see their role as nurturing potential rather than limiting it. Usha looked around the room at the faces of children who had been transformed, families who had been empowered, and community members who had been inspired to create change. This was the ripple effect she had hoped for when she first intervened on Denise's behalf. Not just individual healing, but systemic transformation that would benefit generations of children. Denise approached the microphone with the confidence of someone who had found her voice and intended to use it. Mrs. Vance, we have something special for you. She gestured to Tyler, who wheeled forward a covered easel. With a flourish, he removed the cloth to reveal a beautiful painted portrait of Usha, kneeling beside young Denise on that day in July. But the painting captured more than just a moment. It depicted the transformation itself, with butterflies emerging from what had initially appeared to be tears, and light radiating from the connection between the two figures. Emily painted this, Denise explained, but it represents all of us. It shows the moment when someone believed in us enough to stand up for what was right. It shows how caring adults can help children spread their wings and fly. The inscription at the bottom of the painting read, "To Mrs. Usha Vance, thank you for showing us that every child's tears matter, every child's dreams are valid, and every child deserves to shine. With love and gratitude, the children of Riverside Community Center." As Usha accepted the painting, she felt the weight of responsibility and the joy of accomplishment in equal measure. This artwork would hang in her official residence, a daily reminder of why advocacy mattered and what was possible when adults chose to use their power to lift children up rather than tear them down. "I have a confession to make," Usha said, addressing the assembled crowd. "When I first walked into this center in July, I thought I was here to make an official visit and perhaps offer some encouragement to the children and staff. I had no idea that I was about to witness something that would change not just your lives, but mine as well." She paused, looking directly at Denise, whose bright smile reflected the confidence and joy that had replaced the tears of their first meeting. "Denise, when I saw you crying that day, I saw more than a child who needed comfort. I saw a reflection of every young person who has ever been told they weren't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. I saw the potential that adults sometimes fail to recognize, or worse, actively try to suppress." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "But what I witnessed today proves something I've always believed. Children are not just our future. They are our present. They are leaders, advocates, and changemakers right now. When we believe in them, support them, and create environments where they can flourish, they don't just succeed, they transform entire communities." She gestured to the screen where images from the children's videos were still displayed. "These films you've created will help children around the world understand their worth and potential. Your voices will reach young people in situations similar to what you faced, and your stories will remind them that change is possible." But perhaps most importantly, Usha concluded, "You've proven that the adults who try to limit children's dreams are not just wrong, they're irrelevant. Because when young people know their worth, believe in their potential, and support each other's growth, there is no force strong enough to hold them back." The applause that followed was thunderous, but it was Marcus who captured the moments. true significance when he stood and called out, "Mrs. Vance," we learned something important. We learned that respect isn't about status, it's about how you treat people. And we promised to always treat each other and ourselves with the respect everyone deserves. As the formal program concluded and families began to mingle, Usha found herself surrounded by children eager to share their individual growth stories. Each tale was unique, but all shared common themes: the power of believing in oneself, the importance of supportive communities, and the transformation that occurs when children are encouraged to dream without limits. Later, as she prepared to leave, Denise approached one final time. "Mrs. Vance, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Do you think Christina, Ms. Dixon, do you think she ever figured out that she was wrong?" It was a sophisticated question that revealed how much thought Denise had given to the complexities of human behavior and motivation. Usha considered her response carefully. "I don't know, Denise. But what I do know is that whether or not she learned from what happened, you certainly did. You took an experience that could have damaged your self-esteem and transformed it into strength, confidence, and a desire to help other children. That's not just healing, that's wisdom." Denise nodded thoughtfully. "I hope she learns someday. Not because I want her to feel bad, but because there might be other kids who need her to understand what we understand now." The compassion in the child's response took Usha's breath away. Here was a 7-year-old who had been subjected to racist treatment and verbal abuse, expressing hope for her abuser's growth and learning. It was forgiveness at its most profound level, not because the wrong had been minimized, but because the child had become strong enough to wish for her former tormentor's transformation. As Usha's car pulled away from the Riverside community center that evening, she carried with her the painting created by Emily, the memory of children's confident voices, and the deep satisfaction that comes from witnessing genuine transformation. But most of all, she carried the reminder that sometimes the most important work happens not in official meetings or policy conferences, but in the quiet moments when adults choose to see children's pain and respond with love, support, and unwavering belief in their potential. The story that had begun with a little girl's tears had become a testament to the power of advocacy, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the remarkable transformation that occurs when children are truly seen, valued, and supported. It was a reminder that every child matters, every dream is valid, and every moment of standing up for justice can change the world, one young life at a time. And in the years that would follow, as Denise Strong grew into the confident, accomplished woman her name had always suggested she could become, she would carry forward the lesson learned on that humid Tuesday afternoon, that her worth was never in question, her dreams were never too big, and her voice would always matter in a world that desperately needed to hear it.